Welcome to Mwananchi Digital. You're with me, Mpoki Thompson. This is the Citizen Candid Talk. Today we are with the Ambassador of the European Union to Tanzania, Mr. Manfredo Fanti. We'll be talking about current affairs, specifically the EU-Tanzania relation and how it has evolved over the years. Mr. Ambassador, welcome, great to have you.
Thank you very much for inviting me to this interview. Very pleased to be with you today.
Perfect. Now, specifically, we're going to talk about the EU and Tanzania and how the relation between the two partners has evolved over the years and how it can be made even better moving forward. Now, Tanzania has been a great strategic partner for the European Union for many years. I would like to know, over the years, how has the relation evolved and are there any new areas of interest between the two partners?
Well, first of all, I would like to say that we celebrate 45 years of cooperation between Tanzania and the European Union, and it is exactly 30 years that this delegation has been established in Tanzania. So, as you said, a long-lasting partnership. Well, of course, the core of our cooperation in the past has been always on development, on supporting the policies of the government to develop the country. But this is only the main part which has been prevalent for many years. In reality, the partnership between Tanzania and the European Union is much more diversified. There is a political dimension of a political dialogue on issues of common interest, for instance, at the continental level in Africa. There is a trade and investment dimension which is also very important. And there is also other parts of our cooperation which are maybe less visible, but still quite important, such as the cooperation with the civil society and also some certain cultural activities. So I would say that the partnership is extremely diversified.
Okay, perfect. Now, human rights, rule of law and democracy, those are some of the major elements that form the basis of the partnership that the EU has with Tanzania, as Article 9 of the Cotonou Agreement states. Now, how do you assess the track record of Tanzania with regards to those elements?
Yes. Well, first of all, let me clarify that the European Union does not have the habit of ranking countries according to what they do or they do not do. We do not have a classification. We have an articulated dialogue with our partners, and in this dialogue we always have the possibility of expressing our views, specifically on human rights. Indeed, Article 9 of the Cotonou Agreement is very clear with regard to human rights and democracy as one of the central elements of the partnership. But it is not the only one, because already the Constitution of Tanzania of 1977 has clear dispositions with regard to human rights and democracy. So I would say that this is an engagement that Tanzania has taken not specifically with the European Union, but with its own people to comply with the principles of human rights and democracy. Now, if you wish a personal opinion on what is the country, first of all, I would like to say Tanzania is a peaceful country, a country where we have a religious tolerance, a country where different ethnic groups have been living in peace for so many years. And there is also other dimensions that are important. I think, for instance, that Tanzania does not apply the death penalty for many years. And this is also another positive element that I would like to understand. So I think that Tanzania is party to the main international conventions on human rights. So this is also extremely important. For the rest, what I would like to say is that the implementation of human rights and democracy is a process. It's a process which is important for the development of the country, and clearly also in Tanzania there is a process which has to go ahead, which has to consolidate these principles. Like in Europe, because we are not perfect in this area, we still have a lot of work to do also at our home. I think that there is still work to do. But what is important is that there is a positive trend, and that also important that the international partners are supporting that. And clearly, in all this panorama, what is very important is that the media can offer their contribution to democracy and human rights in the country by expressing their views with a certain freedom. That is, of course, very important.
Okay, so just to sum it all up, because you're the EU ambassador, so you represent the delegation. To sum it all up, your view of the track record, even though you do not assess, but your perception is that the trend is positive.
I assess that there is a trend in this country which is not always evident and continuous. I assess that there may be a moment in which there is a progress, a moment in which there is a stop, and then it starts again. And also, I think that it is important to consider the geographic context of the country of Tanzania. The fact that you cannot assess human rights and democracy in countries of a certain region in the same way as you would assess them in countries of a completely different region. So I think this is really a political and historical context which has to be considered.
Okay, perfect. So you have many objectives that you're undertaking here in Tanzania, but I noticed that health is not one of them. Now, considering the influence, the development, the advancement that the European Union has in the specific sector, the health sector, how come in Tanzania that's not among your objectives in the country?
Because when we identify our priorities areas for cooperation, we always do that in a dialogue with the government. And we are not the only development partners present in Tanzania. There are many others, such as the United Nations, our own member states, which have their bilateral cooperation. So when we made the programming for our present cooperation program, it was evident that health was already quite covered by other development partners, and that our added value was more maybe in other sectors, such as climate change, sustainable energy, development of the economy. So it was not that we are not interested in health, it's simply that there was a collective decision.
Okay, perfect. That makes sense. But then, because it's a progressive, sector which requires a lot of help. So if there are other organizations that are lending a helping hand in that, then perfect. Now, the EU-Tanzania relation cannot thrive without cooperation with the wider East African community, EAC community. Now, as a delegation, are there any areas of significance that you're cooperating with Tanzania, but also the East African community?
Absolutely, yes. First of all, as an ambassador, I am accredited also to the East African community. But we have an important cooperation program with the East African community at regional level, 80 million euros. And we have cooperation projects in different sectors. For instance, we have a project in security to fight against trans-border trafficking and criminal organizations. Therefore, we are helping the various police agencies of the countries to better cooperate, also with the cooperation of Interpol. We have another program on customs in the region in order to introduce a digital platform and therefore make customs operations easier. We have a big program for farmers and business people in order to improve the quality, the packaging, the marketing of their products at regional level. So for us, the regional dimension of cooperation is very important. Regional integration is part of our genetic code because this is the way the European Union was born.
Yes,
so we strongly believe in it, and we really would like the East African community to use completely its potential, which is huge.
Okay, so still on the EAC, we know that the European Union is one of the biggest sources of foreign direct investment within the bloc. Now, how do you deal with the disquiet from some member states when it comes to ratifying these international treaties? For example, Tanzania has been in a situation where it failed or it delayed to ratify some of the treaties.
Yes.
So how do you deal with such disquiet, considering that you have objectives, there's a timeline that these objectives have to be met,
yes.
but then cooperation is a bit uncertain?
Yes, absolutely. Well, Tanzania, together with the other partner countries of the East African Community and the European Union, on the other hand, negotiated an economic partnership agreement some years ago, which is still not signed and ratified. Now, we of course have had a lot of understanding for the position of the different countries if they still have hesitations or doubts about the content of the agreement. And from this point of view, the European Union is also open to consider that an agreement such as the Economic Partnership Agreement could be implemented at a different pace according to the needs of the countries if this was a decision of the summit of the East African Community. So it could be started to be implemented with certain members of the East African Community, and the others who have an interest later stage could join in a later moment. Now, having said that, investment is a big subject in the relations with Tanzania. We are convinced that there is a huge potential for investments in Tanzania. We are really very committed to do our best to support government policies to attract foreign investors in the country. Also because, and this is our own experience in our countries, the only way of having a radical push up of the economy is not with development cooperation, because the amount of money will never be enough, is investment, be it public or private. So that is what we have to do, what we have done in certain countries of Europe, and what we are convinced could also be worth here in Tanzania.
Okay, perfect. So what's your take with regards to the numerous reforms in the economy, especially in areas of mining and agriculture? We saw that the government made certain reforms in the mining sector to ensure that Tanzania gets a fair share of the numerous corporations that in that industry in the country. And also in agriculture, we've seen, for example, cashew. Now trading is done digitally. So there are these reforms that are being implemented in different sectors of the economy. What's your take on that?
The European Union is not present in the sector of mining in terms of cooperation, therefore we have not been directly involved into this sector. But in general, I think that reforms which have the objective of ensuring that a country has a fair share in the exploitation of its natural resources are very important, and they are positive. What is important is to do that in a way that gives positive messages to the investor, that is done in a way that reassures the investors that there will be a clear legal framework for their investments. And this applies to any sector of investment, of course. In agriculture, we are more present. We are cooperating a lot with the government, and we see a lot of positive movement. The fact that there is indeed huge resources that are not yet fully used. For instance, if you think about the need to help the farmers in bringing their products to the market, the cool chains, in general the value chains, there we see a lot of movement in the right direction, and we are really happy to contribute to that.
Okay, so just get a general understanding. You say that the European Union is not involved specifically in the area of mining, but then aren't there any companies, corporations from within, from countries that are members of the European Union that have invested in that sector here in Tanzania? Definitely there. So in case there's some sort of friction, if I may put it that way, between them and the government, can they find recourse through the European Union?
Well, we don't, institutionally, we do not have a mandate to defend the interest of a specific investor or not.
Okay.
So, but certainly if there was a European investor who has a problem, and this happened to me in another country in which I've been posted in the past, and this investor is coming to the delegation of the European Union, we would be giving advice, we would try to weigh by means of dialogue to help, but clearly that would be done as a part of our general engagement, because again, we do not have a specific mandate to be the advocate of individual investors. Our business is more on the dialogue with the authorities to work on the legal and administrative framework.
Okay, perfect. So definitely, as you've put it, the European Union engages with the government on numerous sectors, talking about how to make the policies in the economy better. Now, when it comes to the economy and investment, there was a time you met with the press and you talked about how foreign investors like to have that certainty with regards to the laws, the statutes that are in the country. But then, there's that sort of unpredictability. So, and you as a delegation, you sit with the government, you engage with them, and then you give them advice on how to address some of these shortfalls. How would you say has been the response, or whether the advice that you've given to the government has been addressed or has been worked on with that regard?
Well, I think that there is a real interest on the side of the government. The contacts that we have had have confirmed that interest. We have an important cooperation program which is about to start these weeks, and which has the specific objective of supporting the implementation of the blueprint for regulatory reforms to improve the business environment. So I think that there is a real intention of the government to work in this area. What we have observed so far, for instance, certain simplifications in the regulations for the business, the fact that there has been also a removal of a number of fees and levies, and also budget allocation for VAT refunds. These are just some specific examples. But what is important is to give the investors the impression that there is a dialogue, that there is a willing to engage in a constructive way. It's very simple. When someone is coming to a country to invest its money, they need to know where they put their money, which kind of situation they're going to find, and especially which regulations will apply and which taxes they will pay. And this is the same everywhere in the world. Tanzania is not special from this point of view. And we know that among the business people are honest people, most of them doing their work seriously and looking for an equitable profit, and there are people who are less correct and less honest, and clearly these people are not contributing usefully to the development of the country. But the most of the business people are here to make honest business, and these are our interlocutors.
Indeed, indeed. So definitely, considering what's going on in the world right now, it would be remiss if we not talk about the current global pandemic. How has COVID-19 disrupted the operations that the EU delegation has going on in Tanzania?
Well, first of all, it has certainly stopped for some time any kind of possibility of high-level dialogues, high-level meetings, conferences, because this has become very difficult. The traveling itself, it has become so difficult. In terms of the implementation of projects, we have had some effect, some impact, but honestly not so much. The fact our projects are advancing, sometimes at a slower pace, but they're advancing. In terms of organization of the work, certainly it is a little bit more complicated because you have to factor in new elements, someone who has to come and cannot arrive, so a certain project is a little bit delayed or a conference cannot take place. So the fact that there is a COVID-19, there is this pandemic, is certainly creating difficulties to everybody. Luckily, we can say that the bulk of our work is going ahead.
Okay, perfect. There is another question which I've been meaning to ask with regards to Brexit. We know that the UK was a member of the EU, now it's no longer a member, and then you being the delegation of the EU here in Tanzania, how has Brexit sort of pivoted some of the operations that you had going on now that the EU is no longer part of the UK is no longer part of the EU?
What has been done in the past will continue until the end. For instance, we still have certain projects that are implemented in cooperation with the UK agencies, and they will continue until the natural end of these projects. What will not happen are new actions, new initiatives. This is evident, of course. But I would say that the disruption from this point of view has not been major in terms of the operations that we have here in Tanzania. In terms of relations between the European Union and UK, there is an agreement which has been concluded at the end of 2020, which is a very complex one with a lot of provisions, but which has found a mutually convenient solution for the most important issues, starting, for instance, with the trade, which is extremely important in our relations. So I think that Brexit has been a kind of trauma for the European Union, but now we have found a way of managing that. And you know, UK and the European Union have so many common interests, even if UK is not a member state anymore, that nature will prevail. And the fact that we have business, we have cultural links, we have a lot of other links together will keep that running.
Okay, great to know. So any last words to the Tanzanian government? Do you have any last words for the Tanzanian government?
For the Tanzanian government, yes, of course. We have the fact that we are very keen to continue a good and constructive cooperation with the Tanzanian government. We have mentioned in our conversation so many sectors.
Yeah.
We think Tanzania is a very important country in Africa. We want to hear more the voice of Tanzania because Tanzania has a lot to say to Africa and to Europe. And we think that we are really committed to have this kind of very constructive cooperation in all areas.
We had a great candid talk with the European Ambassador to Tanzania, Mr. Manfredo Fanti. Until next time, see you.